The market square was loud, filled with voices, footsteps, and the sound of chains clinking in the hot air. Alien men shouted bids for tools, food, and even broken machines. But one side of the market was darker, a place where lives were sold. Here, debt slaves stood in cages, their heads lowered, their bodies trembling, waiting for strangers to decide their fate. Among them was a young alien girl, her skin pale blue with faint glowing lines that marked her clan. Her eyes were wide, full of fear and shame, because today was the day her family's debt would be paid with her body. She had begged the guards to let her work instead, to clean, to cook, to dig the mines. But they only laughed and said, "No, your debt is too big. You will be shared." The crowd pressed closer, eager eyes studying her like she was not a person, but an object. Some whispered cruel jokes. Others made greedy plans. The alien girl tried to keep her head down, tried not to cry. But she could hear everything, every word about how she would be used, how she would be passed from one to another. Above them all, on a wooden platform, the debt master stood, his voice sharp like iron. "Here she is," he called, "the last daughter of a house that could not pay. She is healthy, strong, and young. Her family could not give credits, so she will be shared by those who can afford." The crowd cheered. Coins and data chips flashed in the sunlight. The girl felt her knees shake. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Guards stood with shock sticks ready. The cage was locked. The people around were hungry for her pain. Far at the edge of the market, a human stood watching. He was tall, wearing rough clothes, a worker's jacket stained with oil. His face was serious, his eyes dark and steady. He did not look like the others. He did not laugh or cheer. He only watched, silent, as if measuring every word, every movement. The girl noticed him and quickly looked away. She had heard stories of humans, outsiders who did not always follow alien customs, but she knew one thing: no one would save her, not in this place. The market did not forgive kindness, and no one broke the rules of the debt system. The master raised his hand. "Who claims her first?" He shouted. Dozens of hands went up. The noise was deafening. The alien girl closed her eyes, praying for it to be over quickly. But then, a pause came, silence spreading as a new voice cut through the air. "I claim her," the human said, his voice calm but strong. Every head turned. The master frowned. The bidders muttered in confusion. It was not strange for men to claim, but this human stood alone. His hand raised, not with greed, but with something else in his eyes. The master narrowed his gaze. "You understand the rule, human," he said slowly. "She is for sharing. You can take your turn, but she will belong to many." The human shook his head, his face hard as stone. "No," he replied. "I claim her as mine alone." Gasps spread like fire through the crowd. Whispers turned into shouts. "Impossible," someone cried. "It breaks the debt law." The girl opened her eyes in shock. She had never heard anyone say such words, not here, not ever. The master slammed his staff against the platform. "You cannot break the rule, human. She is marked to be shared." But the human did not back down. His eyes stayed fixed on the girl, steady, unafraid. The market grew restless. Voices rose louder, anger, confusion, disbelief filled the air. The girl clutched the bars of her cage, her heart pounding. Who was this man, and why would he risk himself for her? She felt a flicker of hope, so small, so dangerous. She almost crushed it before it could grow. Yet, the human's gaze told her something she had not felt in a long time. It told her she was not invisible, not just property. The debt master leaned forward, his tone sharp. "If you mean to break the rule, then you must be ready to face the punishment." The human only nodded once, as if he had already decided. The girl's world shifted in that moment because in a place built on cruelty, someone had just broken the silence. The market shook with noise, the air heavy with anger and disbelief. The girl's chains rattled as her hands trembled, but for the first time her tears were not only of fear, they were also of something new, something dangerous, something close to hope, and the crowd did not yet know, but the debt market had just changed forever. The market was still shaking with noise when the human's words echoed. "I claim her as mine alone," he had said, and those words refused to die. The alien crowd buzzed with disbelief. Some laughed, some shouted insults, and others simply stared, unable to believe that a human had dared to challenge the system. The debt master raised his staff again, his face red with anger. "Do you know what you are saying, human?" he demanded, his voice sharp like a blade. "This is not a free choice. She belongs to the debt, and the debt belongs to the market." But the human did not flinch. His calm eyes never left the girl in the cage. "I know what I said," he answered, steady and low. "I will take her alone, no one else." The girl's heart thudded inside her chest, her hands clutching the iron bars. Her mind screamed that it was impossible. No one could stand against the rule. She had grown up hearing whispers of girls lost to the market, of debts that swallowed entire families, and never once had anyone spoken words like his. She thought maybe he was mad, or maybe he was mocking her. But his eyes did not hold cruelty. They held something she could not name. The crowd roared in anger. "Throw him out," one alien shouted. "Teach the human a lesson," another jeered. Coins clinked as bidders pulled back their offers, insulted, that their money could be challenged by one man's defiance. The master's lips twisted into a sneer. "You dare defy centuries of law?" he said. "This debt is not yours to change." The human's voice cut through the shouting again. "Then make the law change," he said, calm, each word heavier than iron. The guards shifted uneasily, their shock sticks buzzing with sparks. They waited for the order, their eyes flicking between the master and the stranger. But something in the human's stance made them pause. He did not look afraid, and that unsettled them. The girl lowered her head, her glowing marks pulsing faintly as if her very body reacted. To the storm around her, she whispered under her breath, words only she could hear. "Why, human, why are you doing this?" The debt master slammed his staff a final time, the crack echoing across the square. "Fine," he hissed. "Claim her if you dare, but the punishment will follow you and you will regret this defiance." The crowd gasped, some cheering for the blood they hoped to see, others watching in silence, waiting to witness what no one had ever tried. The guards opened the cage with a harsh metallic grind. The girl stumbled as her chains were tugged, her knees weak, her breath caught in her throat. The human stepped forward, his movement steady, his eyes never leaving her. The world seemed to grow quieter in that moment, as if the market itself was holding its breath. He reached her, and for the first time she looked up into his face without fear. It was lined with scars of work and hardship, but it carried no cruelty, no hunger. He lifted the chain from the guard's hand with firm control, the weight heavy, in his palm. For a heartbeat, the girl thought he might be like the others, pretending kindness only to break her later. But instead he whispered low, so only she could hear, "You are safe with me." Her chest tightened, the words too strange, too impossible, safe in a debt market where no one had ever been safe before. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced them down, afraid they would be seen as weakness. The crowd erupted again, furious and restless. "Punish him now," someone shouted. "Take the girl back," another demanded, but the human simply turned, holding the chain gently but firmly, guiding her down the steps. Each step was a challenge to the law, each step a slap against the system that ruled the city. The master's voice rose in warning. "You will not walk away from this, human. You will not leave this market alive." The human did not answer. He only kept walking, and the girl, though her legs trembled, followed beside him. Her heart caught between fear and a dangerous spark of hope. The guards moved to block them, their weapons humming. The human stopped at last, his hand tightening on the chain, his eyes cold. "If you touch her," he said, his voice a quiet threat, "you will regret it." The air seemed to freeze, for no one expected a human to challenge not just the law, but armed guards. The master hesitated, his mind torn. If he ordered the attack, there would be blood, chaos, maybe even death. If he held back, then the debt market would look weak, and weakness was poison in this place. The girl clutched the human's sleeve, her voice trembling as she whispered, "They will kill you. They always do." But the human shook his head slightly, his calm never breaking. "Not today," he said. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for violence, for spectacle, for blood. But what they saw instead was something they had never imagined. A human walking out of the debt market with a girl who should have been broken, who should have been shared, who should have been nothing. The silence that followed was louder than the shouting. The human did not look back, and the girl, though fear still shook her bones, felt for the first time that maybe, just maybe, she was more than the debt. Maybe she was still someone, and, as they left the square, the master's voice carried after them like a curse. "This is not over, human, not over." But the girl, her chains still clinking softly, held on to the only truth she could cling to. He had chosen her, and he had broken the rule. The sun was lowering behind the stone towers of the city when the human and the alien girl left the market. The streets were still busy, but the noise felt different. Whispers followed them like shadows. People stared at the human walking with a chained girl, not because she was a debt slave, but because he walked as if she belonged to no one but him. The girl's steps were shaky, her wrists raw from the metal cuffs. Her mind spun with confusion, fear, and something she did not dare name. No one had ever defied the rule of sharing. No one had ever looked at her with steady eyes and said she was safe. She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. It could break her heart worse than chains. They reached a narrow alley where the noise of the crowd faded. The human stopped beside a worn-down building, its walls patched with scrap metal and old stone. He opened a door and guided her inside. The room was small, with a low ceiling, but it was warm and smelled of fire and bread, not of cruelty. The girl stood frozen, her back against the door, her eyes darting. She expected him to throw her down, to remind her she was property, but he did not. Instead, he moved to the hearth, tossed wood into the fire, and poured water into a pot. Then he turned, his voice calm. "Sit," he said, pointing to a stool. "You need food." She blinked at him, her mind refusing to understand. Food, before anything else, no orders, no mockery, no cruel hands reaching for her. Slowly, she sat, her trembling fingers clutching the edge of the stool. The human set bread and broth before her. The smell made her stomach twist with hunger, but still she hesitated. He watched her quietly, then spoke again, his words firm but gentle. "Eat, it is yours." Her eyes filled with tears she fought to hide. She had not been told something was hers in years. With slow movements, she lifted the bread, tasted it, and swallowed. It was simple, but it felt like life itself. The human leaned back, his arms crossed, studying her without cruelty. "You do not have to fear me," he said. "I am not like them." The girl's throat tightened, her voice breaking as she whispered, "But you claimed me. You took the chain." "Yes," he answered, "because it was the only way to stop them." His words struck her like a blade. No one had ever claimed her to protect her, only to use her, she wanted to believe. But the fear inside her screamed, "What if you change? What if you want what they wanted?" She asked, her voice trembling. The human's gaze stayed steady. "Then I would not be the man I am," he said simply. The fire crackled between them, and for the first time silence did not feel like a threat. The girl looked at him again, seeing not hunger, not cruelty, but something else, something she could not name but felt in her chest like a fragile flame. Outside, footsteps echoed in the alley, heavy and sharp. The human stiffened, his hand going to the tool strapped to his belt. Through the cracks in the wall she saw shadows moving, guards patrolling, searching. Her heart pounded, fear crashing back. "They are looking for us," she whispered. The human nodded, his eyes dark. "They will come, but let them try." The girl trembled, torn between hope and dread. "You will be punished. They will kill you." The human leaned forward, his voice low. "Maybe, but they will not touch you." Her eyes widened. No one had ever spoken such words for her sake. Not family, not strangers, no one. For a moment, She forgot the chain still bound her wrists. For a moment she felt more human than she ever had before. The footsteps passed, fading into the distance. The girl released a shaky breath, her body trembling from more than fear. She looked at the human again, a single thought burning in her mind. "You broke the rule," she whispered. The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Yes," he said, "and I will break it, again if I must." Her tears finally fell, not of shame, not of fear, but of something close to freedom. The debt market had taught her that kindness did not exist, but here, in this small, fire-lit room, a human worker with oil-stained clothes had proven it was real. And though the world outside still wanted her shared, still wanted her broken, inside this room, for the first time, she felt like someone had seen her as more than debt. And she knew then, the rule was not only broken, it was shattered. Night settled over the city like a heavy cloak. The streets outside were loud with patrols and whispers, but inside the small room, the fire burned low and steady. The alien girl sat on the stool, her cuffs cold against her wrists, her eyes fixed on the man who had claimed her. He moved quietly, setting tools aside, checking the door locks as if he was used to danger pressing at his back. The silence between them stretched, but it was not the silence of cruelty, it was something else, something unfamiliar. She had lived through nights filled with screams, with laughter of those who took and shared, but never a night like this. She did not know what to do, what to say, or even how to breathe in this strange quiet. The human placed a folded blanket on the ground near the fire. "You will sleep here," he said, his voice calm. She blinked at him in shock, her lips parting. "On the floor?" she whispered, unsure. "Yes," he said, "where it is warm, safe, and yours?" Her chest tightened. The word safe struck her deeper than any chain ever had. She wanted to argue, to tell him she was used to cold stone and iron bars. But her throat closed and she only nodded. When he turned away, she brushed her hand over the blanket, soft and real, and for a moment she thought she was dreaming. The firelight painted his face in golden shadow as he sat on the other side of the room, leaning back against the wall. He did not come closer. He did not stare at her body like the others had. Instead, his eyes seemed far away, watching flames, as if searching for answers inside them. The girl hugged her knees, her voice trembling as she asked, Why did you do it?" The human's gaze shifted to her, steady and sharp. "Because someone had to," he said simply. She shook her head, tears threatening to fall again. "No one breaks the rules. No one stands against the debt. They will come for you, they will hurt you." His jaw tightened, but his tone remained steady. "Then let them come, I am not afraid of them." Her lips trembled. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him fear was the only thing that kept people alive. "Here!" But his calm broke her words before they formed, his certainty pressing against her fragile doubt. She looked down, whispering softly, "You do not know this place like I do." The silence returned, heavy yet strange. For once, no one reached. For her, no one demanded. No one hurt. Instead, the human leaned his head back against the wall, his breathing slow and even, as if resting, but still alert. The sound of his calm breaths filled the room like a shield, pushing away the ghosts of the market. Her body was still tense, expecting pain at any moment. But as the minutes passed, the warmth of the fire reached her bones. Her eyes drifted closed, her heart still beating fast. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without chains cutting into her skin. When morning light crept through the cracks in the wall, she stirred. The human was already awake, sitting near the fire with bread and water, waiting. "You should eat," he said, his voice quiet but firm. She rubbed her eyes, her mind still heavy with disbelief. "Why do you keep giving me food?" she asked. "Because you are starving," he answered, as if it was the simplest truth in the world. She ate slowly, each bite a reminder that she was still alive. The human watched her, but not with hunger, more like he was guarding something. "Fragile finally," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "They will not allow this. The debt masters will punish you, maybe kill you." The human nodded once, his face like stone. I know, he said, but they will not touch you while I breathe. Her heart shook at his words, not because of their strength, but because she believed him. Danger pressed, closer with every passing hour, yet here, in this silent room, she felt safer than she had ever felt in her life. Suddenly, heavy boots echoed in the alley outside. Her body froze, her hands clutching the blanket. The human stood at once, his hand going to the weapon at his belt, his eyes sharp and cold. Voices called out, guards ordering doors to be checked. They are here, she whispered, terror rising. Yes, the human replied, his tone low and unshaken. But we will face them. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A fist pounded hard against the wood. In the name of the debt market, open. A guard barked. The girl's breath caught, fear choking her throat. The human did not move toward the door, his voice calm as stone. They will not break me, he said quietly, mostly to himself. Then he looked at her, his eyes steady. And they will not take you. Her eyes widened, tears falling as her hands trembled. No one had ever spoken such words to her. No one had ever stood between her and the world. And in that silent room, with danger pressing on the other side of the door, she realized the human was not just breaking rules, he was breaking the chains that had held her soul. The pounding on the wooden door grew louder, shaking dust from the beams. In the name of the debt market, open at once. The guard barked again, his voice full of command. The girl sat frozen, her breath shallow, her hands gripping the blanket, like it was the only shield she had. The human stood calm, his hand resting on the handle of the tool at his belt, his eyes locked on the door as if he had already decided what he would do. The guards outside muttered, their boots scraping against the stone. They say he broke the rule, one whispered. He took her alone, the debt master wants him punished. Another answered. The human tilted his head, listening, every muscle tight like a bowstring. The girl's voice broke the silence, a whisper filled with fear. They will drag you away. They will drag me back. The human turned to her, his expression steady. No, he said, they will not. The door rattled again, the wood groaning under the force. With one last command, the guards slammed the butt of their weapon against the frame. Open or we break it down, they shouted. The human finally moved, not to open the door, but to slide a heavy iron bar across it, locking it tight. The sound echoed like defiance itself. The girl gasped, her eyes wide. You cannot fight them all, she whispered. They will kill you for this. The human shook his head, his tone low but unyielding. They will not touch you, and I will not bow. A deep anger rose outside. The guards began ramming the door, each strike sending a shiver through the room. The girl pressed herself back against the wall, her glowing markings trembling with fear. She had seen punishment before. Seen what? Happened to those who resisted. The scream still haunted her dreams. But here in this silent room with the human, everything felt different. She could not tell if it was courage or madness, but he stood like a wall between her and the world. At last the pounding stopped. Silence settled heavy and sharp. Then a new voice spoke, colder than steel. You have broken the rule, human. The debt master's voice carried through the crack of the door. You know the punishment? Give her back, and maybe you will live. The girl's chest tightened, her voice trembling. They will not stop, they never stop. The human's eyes stayed on the door, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Then let them come. The master laughed, a sound cruel and sharp. You think you can stand against the law? Against all of us? The human did not answer, but his silence was louder than any shout. It was the silence of someone who had already chosen. The girl looked at him, tears filling her eyes. Why? She wondered. Why risk everything for me? But in his calm face she saw the answer. He did not speak, because to him she was not debt, not property, she was someone. The master's voice grew harder. Then you will face the wrath of the market, and when we are done, no one will remember your name. Boots shuffled outside, The sound of more soldiers gathering. The girl trembled, her heart racing as fear pressed heavy on her chest. "They will burn this place," she whispered. The human finally turned to her, his eyes steady. "Then we will not be here when they come." Her breath caught, confusion mixing with fear. "What do you mean?" He moved quickly now, gathering a small bag, throwing in bread, tools, and water. "I mean we leave tonight," he said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. She shook her head, panic flashing. "No, there is nowhere to go. They will chase us. They will never stop." The human knelt in front of her, his scarred hands resting gently on the chain still locked to her wrists. "I told you before," he said quietly. "They will not take you back. Not while I breathe." Her tears fell, freely now, her heart torn between terror and a dangerous new feeling. Hope, fragile as glass but alive inside her chest. The debt master's voice called again through the door. "This is your last chance, human. Open or die." But the human only rose. To his feet, his voice calm. "Then I choose neither. I choose freedom." The silence that followed was heavy. The girl could hardly breathe as she watched him. He stood not like a man running from punishment, but like a man ready to fight an entire world if he had to. Outside, orders were shouted, the sound of soldiers spreading through the street. The girl trembled, fear gripping her like chains, but when the human took her hand, holding it firm, steady, her fear loosened just a little. She whispered softly, "You are breaking everything." And he answered, his voice low. Some things need to be broken. The backlash of his choice had begun. The market wanted blood. The masters wanted control, and the guards wanted to crush him. But the girl understood something now. The human was not only breaking the rules of the debt system, he was breaking the chains that had ruled her life, and as the footsteps of soldiers closed in, the girl's fear was matched with something else. For the first time, she wanted to fight to live, not just to survive. And it was because one man, a human, had dared to defy them all. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the boots of soldiers outside. The debt master's orders carried down the street, his voice sharp, promising punishment for the human who dared to defy the law. Inside the small fire-lit room, the human moved quickly, his hand steady as he filled the small bag with bread, water, and tools. The girl watched him with wide, trembling eyes, her chest tight with fear. "They will surround this place," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They will burn it down. There is no escape." The human looked at her, his expression calm but fierce. "There is always an escape," he said. "You just have to be willing to take it." She shook her head, chains rattling softly. "You do not understand. The debt masters own every street, every guard, even the sky above us." His lips pressed into a thin line, and then he reached for her wrists. The girl flinched, but he only pulled a small tool from his pocket, working at the lock on her cuffs. Sparks cracked, metal scraped, and with a final snap, the chains fell free. Her breath caught as she stared at her wrists, raw and red but unbound. She lifted them slowly, as if afraid the freedom would vanish if she moved too quickly. You freed me," she whispered, disbelief choking her voice. The human nodded, his tone quiet but firm. "You were never theirs, and you are not mine either. You are your own." Her tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to stand, her legs shaking. Every part of her screamed to hide, to beg, to surrender, because that was how people survived the market. But he was asking her to walk, to leave, to fight for something more. The boots outside grew louder, closer. The human slung the bag over his shoulder and glanced at the door. "They will come through here soon," he said, "so we will not be here when they do." He crossed the room, lifting a loose wooden board near the hearth, revealing a narrow tunnel dug into the earth. The girl gasped, her glowing markings flickering in shock. "You had this ready," she whispered. "Yes," he answered. "I have seen the market long enough to know it is not safe. I built this for a day like today." Her heart pounded. Part of her wanted to believe fate had guided him. Part of her feared this was madness. Still, she stepped toward the dark hole, her body trembling, The human crouched, holding a lantern. "It leads under the street to the old river tunnels," he explained. "If we move fast, they will not find us." Her breath came fast and shallow. "The river tunnels are full of rats, floods and death," she whispered. His eyes met hers, calm and steady. Better to risk the dark than to live as their property. The pounding on the door grew fierce, wood cracking under the strikes. The girl flinched, panic rising in her chest, but the human placed a hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. "Trust me," he said, his voice strong. "We go together, or not at all." Her heart twisted, the word trust echoing in her ears. No one had ever asked her to trust, only to obey, to endure. And yet, looking into his scarred, steady face, she found herself nodding. "I will follow," she whispered. Together they slipped into the tunnel, the board sliding back into place above them. Darkness swallowed them, the lantern flickering weak light across damp stone walls. The air was thick with earth and rot, but the sound of soldiers breaking into the room above faded. They moved forward, step after step. The tunnel narrow, forcing them close. Her hands shook, her breath ragged, but the human's steady movements calmed her. Every time her fear threatened to take over, he whispered, "Keep going. The light is ahead." And somehow she believed him. Behind them, voices echoed, soldiers searching, the debt master shouting, "Find them. No one defies the debt and lives." The girl stumbled, her knees scraping against the stone, but the human caught her before she fell, pulling her forward, never slowing. His strength was like a fire in the dark, burning steady when hers faltered. At last they reached the old river tunnel, wide and damp, the sound of water rushing in the distance. The girl gasped, her glowing, lines flickering brighter in the dark. "It is real," she whispered. "I thought these tunnels were only stories." The human gave her a faint smile. "Stories keep people blind, but sometimes stories hide the truth." They waded into the shallow water, the cold biting at their legs. The lantern's glow shimmered on the surface, casting long shadows on the curved stone walls. The girl's fear did not vanish, but beside him she felt something else building inside her, a fragile, dangerous thing called hope. As they pushed deeper, the tunnel split into two paths. The human paused, studying the flow of water, listening to the faint echoes. "They will search behind us soon," he said, "but they do not know these tunnels like I do." He chose the left path, his steps sure, his voice low. "Freedom is not ahead of us. It is what we take with each step." The girl followed, her eyes fixed on his back. The world outside wanted them broken, punished, erased, but here in the dark river tunnels a human had shown her another way. And though fear clawed at her heart, she felt her spirit rising, not as debt, not as property, but as someone walking toward freedom. The escape plan had begun, and nothing in the market would ever be the same again. The river tunnel stretched on like an endless throat of stone. Cold water splashed at their legs as they moved, the lantern shaking in the human's hand. Behind them, faint echoes of pursuit still chased the silence, the guards spreading through the tunnels, their voices sharp and cruel. The girl's heart raced. Every step forward felt like a gamble, but still she followed. Her wrists, now free of chains, felt strange and light. But her mind was heavy. She wanted to believe they could escape, that freedom was not just another dream, but fear still pressed. Against her chest she had seen too much, lost too much, and the idea that one man could fight the whole market seemed impossible. Yet when she looked at the human walking ahead, steady and unshaken, something in her told her it was possible. At last the tunnel widened into a broken chamber, where the ceiling had collapsed long ago. Moonlight spilled through the cracks, painting silver on the wet stone. The girl gasped, her glowing markings flickering softly in the pale light. "It is open," she whispered. "We are close to the surface." The human set the lantern down and studied the broken wall, his scarred, hand pressed against the stone, his eyes sharp. "They will expect us to take the easy path," he said, "but we will climb instead." Her stomach twisted at his words. The broken wall rose high, jagged and wet with moss. "I cannot," she whispered, fear choking her. I will fall. He turned to her, his gaze steady. You can, he said. I will not let you fall. Her eyes filled with tears. Her voice trembling. Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep risking everything for me? The human's jaw tightened, his words quiet but strong. Because you are not debt, you are not theirs. And I will not let the world break you. Her chest ached at his words, like chains were cracking inside her heart. For a moment she forgot the soldiers, forgot the debt masters, forgot the fear. All she saw was the truth in his face, a truth no one had ever given her. She nodded, wiping her tears with trembling hands. Then I will climb, she whispered. He guided her to the wall, his hand steady as he placed hers against the rough stone. Step by step, he said. Do not look down, only forward. She climbed, her legs shaking, her fingers slipping against wet moss, but every time she faltered, his voice rose from below. You are stronger than they ever let you believe. The words carried her upward, until at last, her hand reached the edge where moonlight touched her skin. With one final pull she emerged into the night air, the stars vast above her. Her breath caught, the sky stretched wide and endless, something she thought she would never see again. The human climbed up behind her, his movements strong and sure. Together they stood on the broken stone, looking out over the wild hills beyond the city. The girl's tears spilled freely now, her body trembling. This is freedom, she whispered, the word tasting strange but beautiful on her lips. The human nodded, his gaze scanning the horizon. It is the beginning, he said. Shouts rose from the tunnel below, torches flickering. In the darkness, the guards had found their trail. The girl's body froze, terror crashing back. They are coming, they will never stop, she said, her voice breaking. The human's hand rested on her shoulder, firm and steady. They will stop, he said, because we will not bow. He turned to her, his face fierce in the moonlight. This is your choice now, he said. You can return, give yourself back to them, and they will chain you forever. Or, his voice grew softer but stronger, you can walk with me into the unknown, into danger, into freedom. Her breath shook, her heart pounding. For years her choices had been stolen, buried under rules and chains. Now, for the first time, someone gave her a choice. She looked at the human, at the scarred man who had broken the rule, who had broken the chains, who had stood against an entire market for her. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. I will walk with you. The human's eyes softened, a faint smile pulling at his lips. Then we walk together, he said. The guard's shouts grew louder, but the girl no longer shook. Her fear was still there, but it was joined by something stronger. She took his hand, their fingers locking, and together they stepped away from the city, into the wild hills where the night air smelled of freedom. The market would rage, the debt masters would plot, the guards would chase, but none of that mattered now because the rule was broken, the chains were shattered, and the girl had chosen not to be property, not to be shared, not to be owned, but to be free. And by her side walked the human who had made that choice possible, the first man who claimed her, not as a thing, but as someone. And in the vast silence under the stars, she knew her life had truly begun.